Assalamu alaikum, كيف حالك? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here still. Thank you for your endurance. I trust that you are here because of me and this great presentation, not because of supposedly there is an iPhone. Anyway, let's get started. So we've heard great presentation during this afternoon, and I'm gonna actually, there's a little bit of a repetition because these things are not actually independent from each other, and like we heard the quantum threat timeline just in the previous session, which was excellent. I'm gonna touch some of these topics. But before we jump into my presentation, let me quickly introduce QuantumGate. QuantumGate is one of the new startups, great startups from the Abu Dhabi tech ecosystem. So we are part of the Advanced Technology Research Council, and basically our mission is to create great products out of the great research coming from the Technology Innovation Institute. We heard already a couple of presentations regarding the post-quantum timelines. If I'm brutally honest, the whole word of post-quantum is a bit confusing, at least to me, because we are talking about the technology which is actually pre-quantum. Like we heard in the previous presentation, we need to start preparing ourselves to the forthcoming threat what the quantum computers are posing to our classical solutions. So to me, we should be talking about the pre-quantum instead of the post-quantum. Anyway, the industry has decided that it's post-quantum. Before we go into inventories and the discoveries, let's start from the basics, if you allow me. So we have in our current organizations, we have confidential data. We may have also the data that we want to protect the integrity or the authenticity of the communication or the data itself. So these are typically the security goals why we want to deploy some of the security technology or the security measures. So we try to establish the trust that we know with whom we are communicating or where the data is coming from. The other two typical terms of the concept what we are using here, that we have two types of data. We have data in transit or we have data at rest. Just simply meaning that in transit, you know, there's two or multiple points that we are either sharing or connecting to, or we have the data which is, for example, sitting in your laptop or in your database. However, typically even this case, there is always an aspect of sharing something. Okay, so data at rest, as mentioned, it's basically data that is sitting in our databases, in our computers, in our local disk. And then we have the data in transit. We are connecting somewhere, establishing a secure connection pipe. And then we have the authentication aspect as well, that we want to make sure that we are connecting to the right location, or we are exchanging the data or the connection with the legit participant. Now, as we heard in a previous great presentation, I could summarize it in a way that this has been quite stable last 50 years. Why? I think Diffie-Hellman was invented 78. Diffie-Hellman is the base of of our PKI systems. You know, how do we exchange keys in the secure fashion, and then how do we deploy this into establishing a secure sessions, etc., etc. And even though there's been some needs to upgrade these base innovations and base solution over the years, there's been DES, we've been moving from DES to AES, we've been moving from 1K to 2K to 3K to 4K keys and so forth. Somehow we could still claim that this has been incremental compared to what's coming, because either we are shifting from one particular algorithm to another, or introducing new algorithm, or we are upgrading our key lengths every so often. Also, some maybe a bit random numbers, but if you think about how we have deployed all of this technology during the past 20-25 years, we have almost the whole wide world is connecting to the thing which is called internet. If you do connect to the interwebs, you are using this technology. So I would say that almost every connection, every transaction, you go into take care of your banking, Amazon, you know, even connecting to your favorite website, it's most likely you are using this technology. There's also quite a lot of money associated to the e-commerce and these transactions, either banking, finance, or selling and buying goods. During the last year, we've been, I would say, I wouldn't claim that there's almost daily based, but at least every month we are hearing breakthroughs that something is happening on the quantum computing side. This is, I'm trying to collect the latest news, and maybe what IBM is saying is also quite interesting, because they're claiming that they have not necessarily cryptographically relevant computer, but anyway, first quantum computer which has enough many qubits to do you know, meaningful tasks, execute meaningful tasks by 29. So we are not necessarily that far from the cryptographically meaningful full devices. The other aspect is that typically in the history of the humankind, these innovations are accelerating to each other. It's also that it's not only, you know, one breakthrough we are thinking about here. It's Peter Shor published his algorithm 94. I think 20 years passed and no one paid too much attention to the algorithm itself. But for example, during the last year, I saw some research paper that there are guys, if I remember correctly, on the Google side, optimizing the Shor algorithm, which means that basically the computing capacity of the quantum device is less than it was originally. We're also seeing the breakthroughs on the error correction and so forth. So combined effect of all of this is actually shrinking our timeline. The key question here seems to be that when do we have enough computational power to break the 2K RSA, as discussed in the previous presentation as well. and when this happens, it's not actually, it's not like things will go little broken. It's you know, what I just described, most of this is actually getting obsolete overnight. The other interesting thing here is also to think about that whoever has this device first, I don't believe that nation will go out publicly announcing that we have it. I'm more thinking about that maybe they use it, they collect the data, they use it, and then we start seeing some interesting things happening a little bit here and there. So it's a little bit the same thing what happened when England was able to break the Enigma machine during the Second World War. They didn't announce, and they were using it very discreetly, even sacrificing their own troops when required. Okay. We spoke about actually, or we saw the presentation in the previous presentation also, that the post-quantum cryptographic algorithms, they are different. So the key thing here is that if I put it in the layman terms, the cryptography what we are so widely using currently, which is based on the classical ECC RSA, if you allow me to present this very simplified thing, is that we can think about that there's a number 21. Number 21 can be split into primes of 3 and 7. Almost everyone can do this in their head. Now, if the number is big enough, splitting or finding the primes becomes extremely difficult, and actually the classical computer, when you try to find the prime numbers, you know, like once your public key is large enough, it becomes almost like an impossible task, because the classical computer is trying to do one by one. Now, if I can basically find the prime numbers from your public key, or your public key prime numbers, I can actually derive your private key, which means that then all the trust is gone, because then I have actually access to all of the same operations that the party having the private key. And that's why we need to come up with the new complexity, mathematical complexity that is hard enough also for the quantum computers, or both of the classical and the quantum computers. Then we have, of course, the consideration of the larger key size, which might be, as we heard, might be a problem for some of the existing hardware-based solutions. We also have interoperability challenges, and also we have a problem that I'm going to start addressing shortly, is that we don't necessarily even know what kind of cryptographic protocols, primitives, keys, certificates we do have in our current legacy system. So, as mentioned, we are, even though I don't want to be the boogeyman telling you about the Q day when everything goes bad, but in a way, if we don't start preparing ourselves well ahead of time, that's ultimately, unfortunately, the scenario. So once we have this cryptographically meaningful quantum computer available, it basically makes our current classic public key cryptography-based solutions obsolete. And then that's why we need to start preparing ourselves. It's a bit tedious project which will take multiple iteration, and it actually may take a few years to get into the quantum safe state. Good news is that we have technology, we have expertise, and even recently we've also been supported by the new standards. So there is already ways of doing the migration and proposals, and even some entities are already doing this, and some countries are leading the global efforts. We heard, actually in both of the previous presentations, we heard that the NIST is actually the leading entity on the standardization front. We have the 203, 204, 205, and then we have a couple of drafts as well in the pipeline. Maybe what's interesting to remember and understand here is that this is just the beginning of the journey. So it's not like we are now fully quantum ready, we have the NIST standards. This is the beginning, and there is more to come. And there is also the probability that we also need to start introducing the algorithms that are based on the mathematical complexity is based on something else than lattice. So maybe the one problem what we currently have also for the future and future-proofing these is that the first three at least are all based on the same mathematical foundation. We also touch the worrying part already to a certain extent. So the first consideration is that, you know, the nature of the data. Are we basically trying to protect something for 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, or 15 year? If the answer is 15 years, we are already kind of late, because the migration will take time. We have actors who are actually already harvesting the data. So meaning that basically I'm sitting there, I'm collecting the data, I just collect the packages. Once I have the capability to open the packages, I start open it, whether it's a 10 years time, you know, that's the... I would say that in many areas, critical areas, we're talking about the government defense sector, definitely we are, in my opinion, already late. Now the good news is that here in UAE, thanks to the Cybersecurity Council and all the government effort and His Excellence, we are one of the leading nation in the world currently taking the steps and having the regulation and mandate to migrate the critical entities into the PQC safe algorithms. US, as we heard in the previous presentation, is also there. Europe is more still following, giving recommendation. There is no hard mandate, the European countries, but I would make an educated guess that it's about to happen as well. All right, I think we touched this to a certain extent as well. So there's a problem that we have we have actors that are harvesting the data as I'm speaking. There is, I'm calling it global clock, which is interesting that all over the world, either standardization bodies or the nations are giving, you know, either there's a legislation or there's a recommendation, and then comes the year when everything should be ready. I would say that currently the clock is is pointing to 2030. So we have 4 years left, and I hope it's enough time. Year ago, when I started with QuantumGate, most of the recommendations were pointing to 2035. My point being is that within 1 year, we've been shortening the timeline by almost 5 years. And it is, as mentioned, it is also likely that it might shrink even more. So definitely my recommendation is that we need to start acting today. There's also the discovery part that we're gonna touch next. That's gonna take some time, planning, and then the actual migration. So all of these steps will require some time. Good. Let's start talking about the so-called migration. Migration means that, how do I upgrade or update my old systems into the post-quantum compliant. The one thing what we've noticed is that the cryptography during the past 20, 30 years has become so stable, like a bedrock for our system security, that most of the organizations don't even pay too much attention to it. So organizations install, appliances, applications, operating systems, without paying too much attention what's in the box. And then, of course, over time, something is being forgotten, as we heard the great example in the previous presentation as well. And ownership is also one key aspect. The simple question here is to what I also like to ask from the client organization, that do you have someone, one team or one person who is responsible of your cryptographic assets? The typical answer is that, yeah, we have our network team. Yeah, but then you have your application team, and then you have your system team. So the ownership, which is across the board, is typically meaning that translates that no one is really responsible. There's also lots of, wrong assumptions. So we still need more awareness. The one problem is also attitude. The old guys like me, we need to learn more new things. Trust me, it's hard because you've been working in the industry the last 25 years. What I learned in the university has been fully working till today. But now I need to start educating, okay, what is this lattice, what does it mean, how does it work, blah, blah, blah. So it is actually quite tedious. So then we also tend to think about that you've been working with the vendor, last 10 years, it's gonna be all fine, they just, bring their updates. Unfortunately, it won't work like that. And we, of course, we like to think that, our CISOs and IT experts, they are experts and they know what they are doing. Okay, this is the question that, once I get your attention, that this is where we start the discussion. Where do we start? What do we need to do? It's a very simple question to which we have a bit complicated answer. So this is not entirely my artifact or product. This is following NIST standards recommendation, other standardization bodies, and also the national recommendations. So first step logically is that this is such a big shift that we need a strategy. Then we need to start identifying. We need to identify what's in our current system. We need to assess our discovery results. We need to start building controls. then we need to start taking remediation actions. So basically meaning that updating our system there where we have the biggest need. And then we need to monitor, and then we do this again. As said, this is going to take multiple iteration, and no one wants to update or upgrade their systems, you know, in overnight or in one go. Definitely, the journey starts from inventory. So how can you start planning something that if you don't know what you are planning? So as mentioned, the problem is that the typical organization don't know what they have in their engine room. So we need to perform the operation, what is called cryptographic discovery and the inventory. Once we have the inventory ready, then it is, and these findings are mapped into the assets and the topology and the data classification. We can start deriving the risks, and then we can start creating the migration plan that we need to start here. Then this is the next step. This is the third step from 3 to 5 years, and so forth. And then we keep on iterating this. The interesting finding as well quite often is that we can forget the post-quantumness, so to speak. Typically, during the discovery and the inventory, we find that there is something that is already obsolete, which actually makes me thinking that why haven't we been doing this before? Why it was now invented as a part of the post-quantum migration. Now, the discovery piece. Discovery meaning that I have my VPN solution, I have my email solution, I have my whatever things we are running our system. We need to go and check that is this particular solution using something related to the cryptography, something like keys, certificates, primitives, protocols, etc. And then we collect the findings. Now, doing this manually is possible, but since typical enterprise environment is also very complex, it will become extremely tedious. The second option is that we try to use some tools that can go and scan our systems, you know, either conducting some deep scanning or collecting other metadata that we have in our systems, or typically is that we end up doing kind of the hybrid, because also being able to do 100% automated, it's a little bit not working. Then talking about the inventory piece. So there's two typical approaches. So system-centric approach means that once we have our finding, we build the inventory based on what we know. So we know that we have a VPN, we know we have an email, we know we have this application and that application. And then we map our findings against this, against what we know. Or we go deep and we bring the crypto in the front, and then we'll try to understand our findings based on our system topology. Both approaches have pros and cons. Then we have these discovery tools that can present. This is actually presenting the crypto view of your system, doing the inventory based on your cryptographic assets. And again, we're talking about quite a complex system, so maybe this visualization is you know, it's a bit difficult to understand it on this slide. But then again, you can create this system so that you can basically bring in the front and highlight your red areas and where your priorities are most. Okay, some of the challenges, I spoke these to some extent already. I would say that the internal alignment is and awareness is still, to some extent, it's missing, it's lacking. We have some vendors who have already been updating. From vendor perspective, this is a little bit of a chicken egg. So as long as the clients are not requesting, they are not necessarily upgrading their systems. And so forth. So this is a repetition, sorry. Now, a couple of recommendations. This is definitely a journey, building the inventory and discovery, which will require expertise. Most of the organization, it is highly recommended to find a partner that have done it, have understanding, because this requires also the deep understanding of the cryptographic systems. There's also the sovereignty aspect, and also the depth of the analysis, how deep you want to go. Start tomorrow. That's my recommendation. Thank you.